Hello and welcome to the Holy Rivals Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me is my partner in crime, the Wild Ute. What's up?
What's up? How you doing, Bomber?
Gosh, I had a great vacation week. I need to apologize to everybody off the top. Last week at the beginning of the week, I thought I would be able to do some shows last week. The internet at my condo was not good, so it didn't work out. So I apologize about that, but it was an eventful week. Um, and I want to call out just right off the top the the show we put together last week on research spending for the schools that are either in the Pac-12 or could be potential realignment candidates for the Pac-12 and even the Big 12, what those values were. I want to just do a shout out to everybody who contributed to those videos, gave us comments, suggestions, feedback. We're going to do a series of those. We recorded another one tonight, and we're going to try to do one once a week so that we can stay on top of what the actual data is. There's a huge demand for the data itself and not all the commentary. And that's what we're trying to provide. Now, we'll put our opinions on it, but we're not going to try to drive you any one place. You can make up your own mind about that. And what do you want to say even further about that?
A lot of dialogue off that. Great dialogue. These are real good breadcrumbs to see what schools fit best to where. We're going to say this again and again. That video is nothing about the quality of the institution itself. That really was just about an approach to do research, a viewpoint to do more research than other schools based on just the mission statement of the school. So really it's good stuff though. When you're looking at it, you can kind of see pairings and you can kind of see where teams fit where, and things start making a lot more sense on the academic side, which is one facet of realignment. So good times. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's start off by shouting out the guys who were here first. Right away, we got BR's in the house. We got Glenn Lumen in the house. We got Larry Pilgrim. Immaculate is here. Who else we got at the bottom there?
We got Mr. Monkey's in the house.
Mr. Monkey's in the house. Shout out to all those subscribers. If you want your comments always read, we get to them. Sometimes it takes us time, but if you're a subscriber, you do a super chat, feel free to do those things, and we'll make sure we highlight your comments and suggestions throughout the middle of the show. So what I want to start off with is sort of a commentary really quick. I don't normally do this, but this last weekend was kind of a big deal for me. Online on Twitter, and it meant a lot to me. I don't want to even talk about the negativity that happened, but I want to really reinforce the support that I received, and people reached out to me about some of the stuff that was either said about me or my show or shows. Anything that I've done socially, it really means a lot to me to have that support. I received great support from Greg Flugar, who, gosh, I was humbled that he gave me a shout out on his show. Greg is an amazing guy, and he's an influencer. I'm an influencer. Wild Ute is an influencer. We're not decision makers. Nothing we say or do can make a tangible effect on realignment or how schools are perceived. We're just commentary. And you can either take us or leave us. If you don't like us, bye. I don't care. I didn't start my show for you. I started my show for everybody else that wants to be in the conversation that's currently cut out. And really, my partners is who I want to shout out the most. Wild Ute was amazing, and I'm going to be emotional about this a little bit, but it was a big deal. The support I received from him, Greg Swaim, Jason Watkins. I mean, the list goes on and on. So anyway, we can move on to funner things. I want to do a real quick review of the slides that we talked about in that one-off video last week. We'll do a quick, high level 30,000 feet run through on these, Ute. Why don't you start for the first one? Just tell me when to switch to the next slide.
Yeah, and I just love blowing through and looking at the facts. So we're not just talking about opinions here. This is just fact-based stuff, right? It's data. It is what it is. And that's refreshing a little bit because we can actually see the field here. So just a full disclaimer to everybody. If you have a question while I'm going, don't wait till the end of the show. Call in, chat. Let's talk about this as soon as possible, really. So don't lose that thought or anything when we're going through this because, yeah, it's data stuff, right? It's not the most insightful stuff, but it's giving us breadcrumbs that we want. So let's do it. Let's jump in this thing. So, all right, you can see here. So we've got we got the 5 different P5 conferences: the ACC, the Big, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the SEC. And what this is showing you is the average research spending from 2012 to 2021, the most recent data available based on National Science Foundation data, the average spends of the average school in those conferences. So you can see like the Big 10, they do a ton of research, right? And the Pac-12, they do a lot of research. This data, also something to consider, all the realignment teams, USC and UCLA, I moved those squads over to the Big 10. So the Pac-12 isn't getting credit for those schools. And any realignment move that's been made so far, like Texas and OU leaving to the SEC is getting credit for their research. This is kind of like a real life view of it, what it looks like today with the current iterations and the current teams. Yeah, and like in the Big 10 stands out to me, the ACC and the Pac-12 really pretty similar, on par. And I think that's kind of telling on why a lot of folks think that there's alignment between the Pac and the ACC, just because of the research approach, the philosophical approach. And so to me, that's kind of telling there. And that makes sense why those connections are there and why some Pac fans want to merge with the ACC and why they did the alliance a couple years ago. And then looking at the SEC and also the Big 12, and like the focus, is a little bit different for some Big 12 institutions like your private schools a little bit. So again, nothing about the quality of the education. I want to just hammer that. Like it's nothing to do with that. Really, it's just talking about research and development spending these schools do, and they've done over the past decade. All right, here, it looks like we've got some comments too here. So we've got so BR saying, does the data include all research dollars or just certain types of research? So it includes all the research dollars that are reporting up through the National Science Foundation. So really all of them. If you went to, there's a source link within the video that we put out last week that it will take you to the stack rankings of all like 1,000 schools that are ranked by the NSF. And you can go into each one of those institutions and really break it down by how much research they're doing in a certain area. So really, it's encompassing everything to answer that question.
And Monkey says, can I see a baseline? What is NSF? Are there other sources research that isn't related and counted?
So NSF stands for the National Science Foundation. As far as there's different groups that would count research maybe in a different area, like there's like on the medical side, there's the NIH, I believe, too. They don't have as comprehensive of data to look at, though, like the NSF does. So it's really hard to quantify that. And really, this is the gold standard of where you can find these figures is the NSF. It's the best data that we have available. So really, it's the only data we can really judge without getting real data from the universities and asking them, what kind of research you did, and maybe pouring through different reports, for all of these schools. So it's really the only way to measure properly.
We've had Jeff Fuller has joined us. I invited him because he knows big data and he understands what some of these numbers really mean out in the real world, especially as it relates to realignment and how they interact with all the different conferences. Jeff, thanks for joining the show. How you doing today?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for letting me join and joining you from the beautiful Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Just got in today and hanging out with some great young men, 2 of my sons included, for the next few days, getting about 30 miles of hiking in over the next few days. So excited.
Well, did you get a chance to watch our short little video on last week that we put out, and kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that had the graphic that you just showed. And I think the thing I've wondered ever since the start is, how in the world is Oregon an AAU school? I think people give them credit for Oregon Health Sciences University. Apparently there's a legislative separation of the Portland based medical and dental schools, professional medical school or health professional schools there, and so I think they don't officially get credit for that, but I think when you lump those in there, they're not they're not that much of an outlier as they appear here. Washington, I mean, just wow. They're an elite academic institution from a research standpoint, and also from, a student admission, selectivity, all those things. Stanford, if you look at all the different ranking systems, I went through a while back, I did sort of a ranking of all the different, academic rankings, U.S. News and World Report, the Shanghai rankings, which are sort of measure the best research universities, looking at all the different things there. Stanford far and away was far above Washington and anyone else in the Pac-12 when you get all those different ranking systems together. But if you're just looking research dollars, yeah, Washington takes the cake. Some people say if you're going to give Oregon the credit of Oregon Health Sciences, you need to give Cal the credit of University of San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco, UCSF, which is a top-notch, medical institution. And I think there's even some other, I think it's some other like nuclear labs or something that some people say Cal should get credit for as well in the Bay Area. So I think doing that actually takes Cal above Washington or right up in that area with those combined dollars. So, but that's also one reason Nebraska was kicked out of the AAU is they lost the affiliation of their medical school, which was based in Omaha, when they're located in Lincoln. So
Right.
It's funny just looking at how these different things are tied together and why it matters for a sports conference. I know why it matters because the presidents are making the decisions and they want to look good. We all know why it matters, but those of us who really care mostly about the sports teams and want to see them succeed on the field and, produce good quality individuals, doesn't seem like it should matter if you have a medical school. And if you're doing the AAU is essentially becoming do you have a medical school club? A good large medical school that does a lot of research. I guess that's, what they want to be. A lot of it's pharmaceutical money research. And some people are sort of critical of, are they selling out to big pharma, to do all these medical based, studies, a lot of them supported by the drug companies. Some people have, criticized the AAU for sort of going down that. That's one reason I think Iowa State was asked to sort of resign from the AAU as an engineering-based school, and they do much medical or pharma-based. A lot of that's not
Jeff,
as valuable.
Yeah, Jeff, we're
to
losing
the
you.
AAU. I don't know why.
Jeff, we're losing you. You're in and out. We got some Robotron in there. Is your signal possibly going down?
Yeah. No, I'm with Jeff though. Jeff's point is like the AAU. The AAU has some bias with seemingly some bias with medical schools.
Right.
Caused some issues with Iowa State. And Iowa State left the AAU in 2021. I believe maybe it was 2022, because they didn't like that approach, that medical schools had some type of different weight than other schools. And so the AAU is an imperfect organization, right? And like there isn't amount of a level of research that I'm aware of that you need to hit to be automatically AAU. Is kind of an invitation only.
Right.
So
we got Jeff back, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Yeah, we can't hear you, Jeff. I'm sorry. No. It's tough when you're camping. You're trying to connect to us. I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate you joining the show, especially when you're remote. Thank you for being here, Jeff. I'm sorry we're losing you.
Yeah, see you, Jeff. Always hate. Jeff, go Utes.
No, go Utes. Bye, Jeff. We'll see you later. Have fun camping. All right. Sorry about that, guys. I mean, he for him to join like that was fantastic. And I really appreciate him doing it. Do you want to go to the next slide? We actually have quite a few comments on the side. I want to shout out Earl Carr, who's one of our subscribers, for being here. Nice to see you, Earl. Thanks for being here today. We've had Immaculate and KZ and Moen Visions here. I'm going to put out invitation for Moen and Immaculate. If you guys want to join us, I'm going to give you the link. I'll just put it in open chat. Just feel free to click on that. I can control who comes in the show. So if anybody else comes in, I'll know if it's you or not.
Let's get nerdy and talk about research. Come on,
let's break this down, because that was the reason we put that presentation together, was so that we could actually have this conversation. We wanted to know, kind of where we were going to be. I put that out there. Do you want to move to that next slide?
I just want to read a comment real quick. And
go ahead.
Jamie B says, and I thought it was all about sports media dollars. Can't wait to see Washington's research team dominate the pack this year. Like, yeah, I totally get it, y'all. Like, it's not everything here, but it's something. Like, you can't discount this.
Right.
Haven't had enough information really to measure things. That's all we're trying to do, is provide value to you in education here.
Right.
Like, there's always going to be dotted lines of adding this extra school or this place with the research findings here. But like, it just is what it is. That's just exactly how the facts are. If you go to the NSF, anyone can look that up. I mean, it's so this is just the stack ranking. And I heard that Jeff made mention that Cal had, some other links and stuff where you could do a dotted line and add more research. Okay. There might be a case like that or two. But really, this is
more about the conversation, right? It's about the framing the conversation. Now we've got Moen here. Hey, Moen, or Immaculate. I'm sorry. Immaculate, thanks for joining, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I was just thought I'd jump in with you while you were talking. I only had like a couple questions on this one.
Sure.
Well, first things that jump out at me, because I've done cursory looks into research, because it does matter for realignment, whether people believe that or not. So I think it's good that you guys are going into this. I do like the 10-year total aspect of it, but because that research goes up and down every year. It's not like just a set amount that they set a budget for and it's boom, it's right there. It does go up and down. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, how do some of these schools fudge their own numbers? Because when I look at Colorado, what I saw here in the recent numbers was like $1.3 billion. And what I've seen for ASU is somewhere around like 650 million. So when I look at a 10-year total and I look at this and I say, okay, so for most of that 10 years, ASU was stronger in research than Colorado. We think of ASU as having shot up as of recently.
Mm-hmm.
What's the story with Colorado? Because if they are doing 1.3 now and they've only done less than 5 over a 10-year total, where did this come from? Like, do you know? I mean,
surprised that Colorado hasn't done more research,
or that they're not, that this isn't higher. Like maybe some of the research that they're claiming on their own public sites and whatnot isn't accepted by NSF.
Like there's always something like that could be in play. Like, I'm not going to act like, I have all the answers here.
Yeah.
I'm just looking like at the most trustworthy gold standard data, and that's the rankings, the stack rankings for this stuff. So there could be caveats with the stuff, of course, right? I mean, it's probably not perfect, but I think the idea here is just to get a view of really what it generally looks like, right? I mean, this is just what the data says, and like, because you're kind of going into the methodology of the NSF, right?
No, well, I mean, kind of like, do they show per year or do they just show a 10-year amount?
Oh, they show per year, and so I took it per year, and I went back 18 years, and I just I thought that if we went back full 18, it's just irrelevant. I mean, it's such a long time period, so I took the last 10, and I combined those just because I felt like I didn't want to give more weight to somebody that had maybe a strong year, like you said. In like the more recent periods and stuff. So this is just really the decade-long average based on the most recent info we have. But yeah, as far as their methodology, I mean, that's not something I can really get into necessarily. I'm just like, on the finance side, crunching it all.
It's interesting that like different looks at it. I mean, because I don't know. Really, my only goal in this isn't to be like, well, what I looked at is better, because I probably didn't look at it near as deep as you. But for me, the numbers I saw, that's part of why I have Colorado as the number 6 PAC school to the Big Ten eventually, whether it's via the Big 12 or not. But when I look at this number, I say, well, see, now if this is the case, I might not go that far because, I mean, Utah, number 1, is higher than them. Utah's got a better overall athletic department.
Mm-hmm.
So, it makes me question things and say, okay, what is reality? Because that matters. Like the amount that Colorado has, if it's 1.3 billion a year, then it puts them much higher in this. If that's them fudging it by saying that they're putting in their own money and then jumping up the numbers, like maybe the NSF is just talking about research grants that they got, whether it be from agencies or companies. I don't know, but it's interesting. It definitely puts them a lot lower in the odds, and it definitely puts them as a much more likely Big 12 and that's it school.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty revealing, isn't it? In a lot of ways. And, Bauman and I just did a video with the ACC included. It's going to come out tomorrow morning, and it's real revealing to see kind of who pairs where.
Right.
Like it's a lot of the schools that we're talking about anyway, but it just actually gives you some, quantifies it a little bit more, right? Rather than just like your opinion.
Well, what we're trying to do is we're building a story over a period of weeks with episodes once a week that eventually we're going to end up with somewhere in the middle where we're going to have the research education dollars that are accounted, that are official, at least the ones that we can get our hands on as reported, like the National Science Foundation. And then we're going to put in a competitive balance study as well, to show who are the ones that are really carrying the day, because Alabama is probably pretty far down on the research scale. They've won, how many championships in the last decade. So it's going to take a while take us a while to work through all that data, but we are going to do it. And when we're done, everybody will be able to make up their own minds where they think some of these realignment candidates should go, and really what the data actually means. We're putting it in context. Now I added Moen Vision to the show. Hey, Moen, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Doing great. So thanks for being here. So you heard Immaculate's initial thoughts. Did you get a chance to watch our video last week?
Yes, I did.
And what were your thoughts about that?
I think it's important to keep in mind that these are revenue expenditure or research expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
So I think where Immaculate may be getting the numbers fudged a little bit is expenditures is a way, it's a creative accounting term. So this isn't total research. This is research expenditures as provided to the National Science Foundation.
Okay.
There are other research initiatives that might not be counted towards that. But this is still going to be very, very accurate to what you're actually looking at as a good indicator. But I mean, there's stuff in Stanford that you're not going to see in Stanford,
Right.
simply because it's proprietary.
Right.
It's research that they can just blanket statement and say pharmaceutical without having to
Artificial intelligence.
Right. I mean, there's all kinds of computer
Yeah.
sciences and stuff like that. Absolutely.
And that's Colorado. They do a lot lot of military.
They do. Colorado State does as well. Yep.
Yeah, they have connections in that way. But we won't go into that too much because it's just mumbo jumbo.
Right.
But
I had a
could be
question.
it.
I had a question for Moen specifically. So you come from the Big Ten. Your legacy, your blue blood, all your history shows that the reason I respect your opinion is because you can see the length and breadth of everybody, and really because you're looking down from on high, you can make some of these assessments that other people, when we're in the middle of a fight, you can't see what's going on the periphery. So after you looked at all this, tell me what your thoughts are about Oregon. And again, let's talk about brand value and what they actually would bring to the Big Ten, because I still believe Washington and Stanford would be the two schools that I would take if I was running that conference.
Well, it's going to be a matter of who you can take.
Okay.
I don't think Stanford will be available.
Oh, okay.
I'm of the firm belief that Stanford, because we have certain requirements for conference members in terms of access to research libraries and sharing research data.
Right.
And Stanford has been hesitant in the past with anybody outside of Cal Berkeley to share research data. So
That's
I don't
interesting.
think so. I mean, it's going to have to be, they're either going to have to give that up and share it with every other member of the Big Ten. The Big Ten's not going to make an exception on that.
Can they just let them in without having access to that data?
No.
Only as a single sport member.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? That's
if you're a
really
conference
interesting.
member, it's something everybody gives up. If you've got a medical center, you're all part of the Cancer Research Consortium.
Interesting.
If you're a member of the conference, you're all part of the Academic Alliance, which allows.
That's why Johns Hopkins is the example that I would throw into there. I'll go right back to that. But they're a single sport member and they do not belong to any of that. And the Big Ten wants them dearly to get one more sport in there.
That is remarkable.
Well, and the Big Ten has offered them,
of course,
even though they're a single sport, to come into the Academic Alliance.
Right.
Johns Hopkins has declined because, again, they don't want to share that research.
Okay. They don't play in lacrosse or something like that?
It's lacrosse that they're a member.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what my son played lacrosse in college, so I know a little bit about it. I know Crazy, right, from Utah, but I know Johns Hopkins was always there at the top, and so I thought they were part of the Big Ten for that lacrosse conference.
That's the only thing they're a part of. They were.
I think they won the conference too.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, they did.
So what's your answer then about Oregon? I mean, wouldn't you be embarrassed to bring Oregon into your organization with this data?
Okay, here's the thing you're going to have to understand. There's things called compromise. Oregon has a brand, and the Fox executives are going to want Oregon's brand.
Right.
The Big Ten presidents aren't going to want Oregon because of their research.
Okay.
So there's going to have to be a compromise here. So the executives might get Oregon on board, and the Big Ten presidents might require them to pay the freight on another less known brand, better academic candidate to go along with them.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not impossible for Oregon to get into the Big Ten.
But
it's possible, but there's going to have to be compromises made to do that.
Which is, it doesn't that describe their entire system at that school? AAU and all these other things. I mean, aren't they the exception to every rule? Come on, let's be honest. We're being honest here tonight.
Okay, we'll be honest here. Oregon, the only thing Oregon has for it is its football program.
Right. Okay.
That's it.
I'm glad we said it out loud.
It's football and Phil Knight.
Okay.
But that still carries weight to network executives.
Sure, I get it. I understand.
I think the Big Ten has taken a show me stance with Oregon. Oregon made a lot of promises when they met with the Big Ten earlier last year.
Like branding things, stuff that they can do for the conference when it comes to all their Nike, across the world and all that.
Well, no, it wasn't even really that much stuff. It was, they were supposed to get more research going in there. They were supposed to get, they were going to make a $300 million investment in their hockey program and get hockey, a dedicated hockey stadium built there, which is all good and well. But I think from the Big Ten standpoint, they want Oregon to actually show them the willingness to do that.
Okay.
It's one thing to talk a big game. It's another thing to actually, I think, do it. Right. And like I mentioned on the previous show, Oregon's issue is their legislature.
Right.
They are not allowed to have a medical school. They're not allowed to have a dental school. They're not allowed to have an engineering school.
Right.
Health and engineering are the two hugest slices of research. You're not going to get that research up unless you can have an engineering school or a health system.
I've added Larry Pilgrim to our show. Larry, welcome to the panel. I appreciate you being here tonight. You had a comment here. I want you to explain this. You're saying California school system is actually #1 in total, I'm assuming, the entire state. They do $4 billion annually. Is that accurate?
At minimum, yeah. So you've got like UC Berkeley, you've got UCLA, you've got Santa Barbara, you've got Riverside. If you combine all of the universities that do research at the University of California, I think it's more than $4 billion. It's like nobody's even close. Okay. If you took their complete research system into it for the state universities. So yeah.
Well, that's really interesting, I think. Did you have a question for the panel?
Well, sort of. Let's see. Mo Envision's on here.
He is.
So he seems to have a little bit of a academic insight to what's going on, and I'm just curious how big the cancer research is kind of determining some of the realignment in his view.
Oh boy, it's going to be up there simply because of the amount of money that gets poured into cancer research through federal grants.
Right, but that's not even
and not to mention the pharmaceutical companies, obviously. And that, and I will state this, having gone to Ohio State, having been a cancer survivor going through the James Cancer Hospital, it's a big deal. So it's going to play a part. It's going to play a significant part, I think.
Right. Plus I almost think, I haven't done my research on it, but as far as private donations in cancer, it's very substantial itself, from what I understand. So
that's probably true, but a lot of that does go towards facilities.
Okay.
Hey guys, so really one thing that we need to make sure we're getting right here. So there's a difference between research spending and research grants. So grants, is a lot of this stuff's coming from the federal government. Grant money to do research on this in a certain area, right? Health,
correct,
business, whatever. So we're not talking about the amount of grant money that these schools are getting federally. We're talking about how much they're spending and disclosing. So hopefully that's helpful, a little bit of clarification, because we're talking about their spending levels here, which I think is the best measure of really how much research they're doing, because that's what they're spending money on.
Right. It's the expenditure.
And when people say research, like, can anybody up here answer what that means?
That's a great question. We've had that had that asked several times.
And
what was that?
It means expenditures. That's what I'm saying here. That's
research.
Why I diced it that way. Yeah.
Yes, but they do get money that comes in for research, and then they take that money and then they spend it on research.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. So to say that grant money isn't involved in it, I think you're right directly, but it comes to them and then they turn around and spend it. Now, maybe something where there's a set thing like this is for that research, and the school can't split it up at all in any other way or determine what it's used towards. That's probably money that's not going to be on your listing, I would guess. That's what I'm guessing. That's what I'm thinking why Colorado's is so low.
Yeah, I was just asked. BR has a question that came up while you were talking about this. I brought it up. I believe Colorado research shot up and then fell off some. That sounds exactly similar to the experience that Utah had. Isn't that right?
Right. That's right. Utah's actually research growth levels have gone down since being in the Pac-12.
Right. Which is really interesting, because they trumpeted that as being the demarcator between a good conference and truck stop conference.
Yeah.
You're talking about grant money received, or are you talking about what they've spent?
I'm not
right.
The data that you see, the NSF data, has nothing to do with the grant money. I mean, like Immaculate said, the grant money is being spent, but it's not factoring in the grant money totals. It's just these.
Right. So my stepfather was a world-renowned professor at the University of Illinois, and I've talked to him a little bit about the grant situation. So a professor, like an engineer, will apply for a grant. He'll get the money. He'll spend all the money, and that's just in one field. So you'll have a bunch of different fields that come in. Like you'll have dance. There's grants for dance. There's grants for everything. And so they will spend that money particularly on the grant that it's applied for. So if you apply to do studies on a bridge all over the Grand Canyon, and you ask for 20 million and they give you 20 million, you have to spend that 20 million, but you can also use it in facilities, employment, which is what The University of Utah in 2010 employed 8,000 people alone through grant research, whether it was through engineering, medical, pharmaceutical, neurological, different departments. So it's a very vast network of things that are going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got the Larry. I don't know if you can see this where you're at, but I've got the Utah scale up that obviously Ute put together. This is going to be part of a future presentation. We were going to kind of show how things had moved over the last decade or so with some of these schools that had already joined new conferences. Utah being one of those, Colorado was another. But just as an example, and you want to walk everybody through what this means here?
Yeah, it's pretty kind of self-explanatory, but really since going back 18 years here, this is the graph line of Utah's spending. We're not talking about like just the grants, we're talking about how much they spent here on research and R&D and development. And this is based on the NSF data. So, the X's are when they joined the Pac-12 and joined the AAU. The AAU is so recent that it's too small of a sample size to really take seriously. But you can see bottom right, I know that's a huge eyesore, but those are growth rates for different time periods, compound growth rates. And so you can see from like 2004 to 2021, that's the whole data set, that Utah grew research spending 5.66% per year. That's what that's saying. And then you're looking before the PAC, they were growing at a 7.53 rate. So almost 8% growth in research spending. Before the PAC, after the PAC, they've been growing by about 3.8%. And then there's other figures to kind of throw out what the AAU impact would be, but again, too small of a sample size. But I just heard a lot. I mean, I just want the truth, guys. That's the honest take for me. And there's a lot of fans that I heard that said, hey, like Utah's research has just exploded since joining the PAC and stuff. And I wish that were the case. But like, that's not the facts. It's not. I mean, there was a dip in there. I can't explain the dip. I try to dig into why, on like the reasons why the dip happened and stuff. But really, the growth rates were lower for the Utes after the Pac-12 invite. That's just what the data shows.
Wasn't there one other data point that one of the listeners, which I thought was a great stat, when they joined the Pac-12, they were 47th in research spending, and now for 2023 or 22, whatever the last date was that you measured there, they were 47th still.
Yeah,
they hadn't moved an inch. So they were 47th before, they're 47th after.
There's no 50 before and 47th.
It's the exact same thing.
A decade.
After over a decade. So I don't think any of us on this panel can account for that. But honestly, let's just think about this common sense. This is where I come in. I'm not a numbers guy like you is. I'm a common sense guy, and I just think nuts and bolts say the reasons that these schools haven't moved, why Colorado hasn't moved, why Utah hasn't moved, for that matter, why people haven't left the Big 12 to join other conferences. A lot of these things have to do with the fact people just don't want to change. They see that there's different options, but at the end of the day, it's easier to go with the girl that brung you, right? You want to stay with the dance part you already have, and changing badges, changing everything that goes to being in a conference, the hassle that goes along with it. I just think these presidents just don't want to do that. It's like I don't even care if I make less money. Somebody has to convince me that we're going to be in a worse position. Otherwise, I'm not going to listen, and we're just going to stay where we're at. Can anybody tell me that isn't true?
No, I think that's accurate. It's nobody wants to take the risk on a lateral move.
Right.
USC and UCLA are willing to take that risk because of the rewards are so great in terms of media money. You're joining a conference with just as much prestige as you are in terms of football blue bloods. It makes sense for someone like USC or UCLA to make that's a forward move. For Colorado to join the Big 12, it's a lateral move. And that's not anything against the Big 12 conference or the fans of the Big 12 conference. I think if Kansas decided one day to join the Pac-12, it's still a lateral move. Nobody in realignment wants to make lateral moves. They want to make a move that pushes them forward.
Right.
Right. And the biggest thing for me and I saw it because, like I said, I worked on some of the pharmaceutical buildings up by Red Butte, is when you come in with, say, a Stanford and you're on a research project and it's privately funded, you make money off of that. That's not, when it's private, you'll have like a BARD or one of these companies come in and they'll pay somebody to do research, and if you come up with a wonder drug or whatever, you get a percentage. And so when you're thinking about it, who in the Big 12 does a lot of research in cancer? You have Kansas and Baylor, but Baylor's tied in with Texas, so I don't know how that's going to work down the road, because I believe right now Baylor is in pretty good with the University of Texas for cancer. So it's just one of those resource situations where you have 3 of the top 10 cancer research universities are west of the Rockies. In fact, I think, Stanford's, I think, number 1 or number 2. And so it just, I like you said, it's the girl they've been dancing with, Nathan. Right. And I really believe they've just built a niche there, and they know what they have, and moving, they don't know. Right. So do you take a chance on this for what, is a risk reward?
Bomber, I think this actually goes into the discussion that you and I recently had, like the realign from a school's perspective. If you're the president of a school, think about realignment like as a 3, like in 3 aspects, right? Like it's a 3-legged stool.
Right.
There's the athletic part, and there is the academic part, and there's the growth strategy, the strategy of the school, like strategic. Yeah. Those all 3 matter and everything. We're talking about one leg of that in the academics, and we're kind of parsing that leg and looking at one part of that leg with this research spending. So we're not talking about everything, but that's how this all intertwines. That's why this matters. Like, why are we talking about this, right? That's the only reason we're talking about this, is because that factors into the president's decision. It's one of the 3 legs of the stool.
And that affects millions of people, fans, students, alumni. It's amazing how, I think what this has laid bare, this whole last year saga has laid bare the fact that this country has a lot of different ideas about how things should be run. And certain parts of the country think one thing, other parts of the country think other things. And it's easier to go into a club and be with your friends than it is to do outreach and possibly join another group. And it really just boils down to how people communicate and the things that they value and I think are most important. Before we continue, can I just share something really cool with everybody? And then I'll get to Earl's message here. I'm going to bring up this video. There was this runner for BYU over the weekend. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see this, but this is the national championships for the 3,000 meter steeplechase. And I'm going to drop this comment of Earl's really quick. I hope you'll be able to hear this, and just try to follow, and I'll explain at the end what ended up being here. If it'll go. There.
Watch the white singlet, blue shorts.
This is the danger of the steeplechase. They're bunched. You can't see the barrier. Someone takes more time and you went down. This is only a 3,000 meter race.
Wow, what a story this is. From falling to the finish and a national championship. What a story.
Oh my goodness. They gave me chills every time I watch it.
Have you guys won the steeple championship?
They did, the 3,000 meter steeplechase, and the guy fell down, and you saw how far back he was. That's what college athletics is about, right? That's what we want to be watching on Saturdays and Thursdays and Fridays in football. This other stuff just pales in comparison to that level of competition. Had you guys seen that video, and do you have any thoughts on it?
I missed that one.
I haven't seen it, but good for him. I mean, to come back from that, I would say good for him, but also bad on everyone else. Guys, pick it up.
I think it's probably a combination of the two. That's true. All right, let me jump back here. So there was this comment, and I've since lost it. Where did that comment go? That was from, it was about Nike. And once Phil Knight dies, I think we talked about this the other night, Moen, where you said, isn't there something in place that if Phil Knight is gone, they've got something in the background that'll continue feeding money into.
Yeah, he's set up a trust that'll continue to put money into the University of Oregon. But
Right.
I mean, Phil Knight and Nike, it's not that big of a deal in terms of conference realignment. I would just tag on to what Wild Ute said. There's a fourth leg on that bar stool, and it's cultural fit. That's going to be a big part of the Big Ten. That's what the Big Ten presidents want, is a cultural fit. Yeah. Now, is Oregon a cultural fit? That's going to be the question. I don't think that they're quite the cultural fit, but again, it might be a situation where there's compromise. Oregon gets in, and the presidents get the cultural fit from another candidate they want that otherwise couldn't get in.
So could I jump in on that one?
Yeah, go ahead, Immaculate. Whatever you're saying.
I want to say, if you could pull up that graph, the Washington, the research one again.
I can. Give me a second. Yep, I will.
Just to give people a little different perspective. I'm saying this on top of what Moen said on, because he says stuff and half the time I'm just like, yep. He can just talk and I can just sit back and listen, and Moen Vision generally gets it right. But I just want to add a little bit on there. If people look at Oregon and they see that and say, yeah, how could the Big Ten take that? Well, you cannot look at it in an individual basis. You cannot look at it just on their own, because as Moen says, it's not about a one-piece scenario. It's about a two-piece scenario. And as much as the people want to say the presidents have all the say in this, they have the final say, but they don't have all of the say. And a big part of it is Fox. And will they pay the freight on a school? And if you were to take that Oregon graph there and put it on top of Washington's graph, you'll see that if you were to take out Stanford and Cal from this, you could probably take any two of those other schools and stack them, and they wouldn't be as high as that Oregon and Washington stack. And that's where the compromise is. And that's why it's a compromise, and that's why it's talked about so much, because Washington brings so much on their own that you can stack Oregon on top of them, and that way Fox can get what they want, which is Oregon. I mean, you just look at their ratings that they get when they play Georgia, when they go down into Texas and play there. They get numbers when they play out east. It's right. They just do. So that's the network's pick. Washington is the Big Ten's pick, and it's a compromise. So when people look at that and say they shouldn't make it because of that, it's more about a two-school combination, like Moen says. And that's why one that's so low can actually get in, because they need Fox to pay for it. And Fox is saying, this is the one we want. That's the one you want. We're okay with paying for that one, even though we don't actually want Washington. We want Oregon. And one of the things that people don't think about with Oregon that I do, and maybe this isn't worth it, I'd like to see what the other guys think on this as well, is the United States Olympic team headquarters, or some aspect of it, if I'm not mistaken, is located at Oregon, is it not?
The track and field is.
Yes.
The mountain one is in Colorado Springs, I think, for all the winter sports.
That would make sense.
Yeah. And
while most people aren't going to think of that as a big deal for realignment, which it's not, it's a big deal to athletic directors to be connected into that.
Right.
Talking about how many of your athletes actually become Olympic competitors.
Right.
To me, I would want that in the conference. Just for all the rest of it.
I think it's a fair comment. Sergeant Pickles says here, I will admit maximum bias. He's obviously a UW guy. But UW had the best combo of academics and football of the remaining schools. So what you're saying, and I this makes sense to me, is that Washington is so far on that scale. Mm-hmm. Everything, those 3 or 4 legs to the stool, they're so far up on that Oregon would almost be a come along.
Yeah, like Washington is I think Washington was actually Big Ten's pick after Stanford.
I've said that for a long time.
Yeah, we talked about that. So I don't want to go too, but I just think that the Big Ten is that high on it. Like everyone in it, Moen Vision can probably attest to it. Like they're a Big Ten style university through and through. And I don't think that there's another big name that Fox or even ESPN for that matter, looks over there and says, this really pushes the number for us. And if they really want Oregon, they know that they have to pair it with a big pick for the Big Ten in order to get Oregon. And I think the only one that's there is Washington. So basically, if Fox wants Oregon, it has to come with Washington. Otherwise, the Big Ten will probably turn them down.
That is
Yeah, I think Washington's desirable by Fox as well. I don't think it's so outside, because I mean, Washington has three national championships in football. They won one as 1990, I believe.
That's right.
91.
Yep.
So they're a legitimate school. I mean, I just think that Oregon will come along, because look, we can't just have. It depends. Are we going to 20? Are we going to 24?
Right. Or 25,
you know,
if you've listened to Immaculate.
Or 25, or 26, or 32.
Right.
But ultimately, Oregon is going to get in, but I think Oregon gets in as a compromise. Oregon gets in because they're bringing Fox is willing to pay for the other candidates to come in as well.
I think that's fair. Let's change the conversation here a little bit. Let's talk about this one. This was the end of our presentation that we put on last week that you can watch right now. It's a short that's already online. I recommend everybody go see it. By the way, if you want your comment to be read, everybody please subscribe to the show. Give us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment or suggestion. We definitely bring people into the show, as you can see from our panel tonight. And we listen to those comments, and we try to adjust our shows to meet those expectations. This is the last slide that we talked about in that presentation last week. Just you guys' comments off the top. What do you think about these as expansion candidates to the Pac-12? And I'm going to turn off my mic because I'm going to laugh a little bit.
Well, I definitely have stuff on that, but I think I'm kind of curious what these guys have to say if they want to go first.
You know, I did opine on this in the video. I think that it's pretty telling where SMU's standing right here with these expansion candidates. And also, if you throw Boise State into this chart, they're right above SMU, in between UNLV and SMU. So it just gives you a little perspective just on really how low research SMU has historically done. And, you know, as a Pac fan, you know, we've been squawking for so long about we need research schools. We're not going to the Big 12, you know, schools and the Four Corners because of research purposes. It seems disingenuous a little bit to bring in SMU when we've been squawking like that for 6 to 9 months. I'll be honest with you. So just for the sake of pride, maybe just saying, hey, they're just not a very good fit academically with their approach to academics over at SMU. I mean, it's a great school, great quality education, produces a lot of rich folks, successful folks, but they don't align exactly with the Pac-12 universities as far as a research and development perspective. A team like Tulane, like squad like Tulane may, and San Diego State a little bit more. But those are my thoughts. But go ahead, you guys, jump in.
Well, I'll just say this much on this one. It kind of goes into putting on my hat again. Once again, that's why I was going to wait a little bit. It's the crazy talk is, you know, my opinion on the Power 5 votes and just how valuable they are.
Right. People
will agree or disagree, and that's fine. What I see the PAC doing now at this point in time, and it's a level of desperation, and they're basically mimicking what the Big 12 did. And I know Yormark gets a lot of credit, well-deserved, but I don't think he's brilliant. I just think he's good at reading the room and being a businessman and looking and saying, this will get this reaction. So when they were losing Texas and Oklahoma, he goes and he brings in 4 G5 schools. And then he miraculously gets this TV deal. And if you're just to look at it on the surface, you'd say, that's crazy. How did that happen? Well, he brought in 4 G5s and created 4 new P5 votes. We've talked about that. This is what I see the same thing is the PAC is basically making the same threat. But for them, it's just a threat. The Big 12, it was real. He did it. all of a sudden, boom, he gets the deal, so that way they don't add any more, because the networks want certain votes to happen in the future. And anytime you add new votes, you don't know where they're going to land on the spending measure. Like, they might not be comfortable. So I think the PAC is basically threatening here to add these. And so it has nothing to do with research, because none of these schools are actually going to get invited. Because if they would be replacement options at best. And if you lose Washington, Oregon, or you lose Arizona, Colorado, Arizona State, Utah, these are not replacements. So it's really just kind of a threat, like, pay us or we'll add 4 more votes. Because when you look at these numbers, that's really all it is. They're just 4 more P5 votes, because they don't add anything to the conference, and what the conference says matters to it.
Moen?
I would say, first of all, I think there's a tendency to confuse and make academics and research interchangeable. Research is research and academics is academics.
Right.
SMU is a very good academic school. Tulane
are.
is a very good academic school.
Yep.
So, I mean, let's not interchange those. But the problem you're looking at here is who else is available.
Right.
The PAC has to, if the PAC has to expand, they can only expand with what's out there available to them.
Yeah.
These are the best available. Are these great options? No, they're not great options. And it's no offense to any of those 5 teams, but they're not great options for the Conference of Champions to try and replace a USC, a UCLA, a Colorado, an Arizona, a Washington, an Oregon, a Utah, an Arizona. You know, they don't have a lot of options.
Right.
It's, you know.
Which is why they don't have a media deal. I think that's the crux of it, right? Yeah, that's the crux of it.
So I think with each team, when you look at the graph, if you bring SMU, there's certain potential there. We know they're not the biggest draw in Texas, but what they do bring is they have political power as well. Politically, there's a lot of connections. I don't know how deep that is. UNLV that is a no-go. I've lived in Vegas. Nobody cares about sports there. I mean, it's hard to get people to pro sports events, let alone college. So I don't like UNLV. Now, San Diego State, on the other hand, because they're part of the system, they're not in the same system as, I think, Cal and UCLA. But from what I understand, part of them coming to the Pac-12, just like Oregon, they're going to have a lot of restrictions lifted off of them academically. They can only have so much research, doctorate programs. From what I'm understanding, that's another reason why they want to be in the Pac-12, because academically they're going to have restrictions. They're going to be able to have more curriculum and doctorates and start doing more research. Southern California, that's just a benefit. Tulane, I don't know what to think about Tulane. And if you lost Colorado, you better grab Colorado State.
Right.
So those are my views, and like these guys are talking about, those are your best ads. Boise's probably your best football that's not in there, but that's all they bring. And then Fresno brings football, and that's all they bring. So your best 2 football programs actually are not even on the list.
Yeah, where is Fresno? I'm curious. Where did Fresno come out on that?
Yeah, I could take a look at that. I didn't throw them in the Pac-12 expansion candidates because for the Pac, that doesn't make much sense with Stanford and Cal.
Right.
But I can get the figure.
It was bad.
Bomber, and I'll actually crunch some numbers real quick.
Okay. All right. You do that in the background. That's fine.
Could I
go ahead?
Could I answer someone?
Please.
Charles in chat, guy that I like a lot, and we get into a lot of chats about things. He's calling SMU a Southern Ivy, and that's fair. But here's the thing about realignment. Like, your school's academics don't affect my school's academics.
Right.
Your school's research matters to my school because your connections, especially via something like in the Big Ten with the way they do it, your connections are something that I might be able to benefit from, because your research infrastructure might be all used up. You only have so many labs, you only have so many researchers. And so someone comes in and wants you to do research, you might lead them in my direction. So by being connected, I might get some research from those that and your connections. But your academics don't matter to me. That's why the Ivy League, which he compares it to as a Southern Ivy, they don't even pay out athletic scholarships yet. It's kind of apples and oranges. It doesn't do anything for the Pac to add a great academic school right now if it doesn't bring either research money or it doesn't help you get a better TV deal. That's why.
And Devil Frog, his comment here, I think, speaks exactly what you're saying, Immaculate. He says 3 small schools with small fan bases in the same round of realignment. Can you call that expansion? And I think that's kind of where we're at. We've talked this inside and out, and a lot of people have opinions about it. But
there's one way in which they're all equal in value, though. There's only one thing.
Right. That's true.
The vote. A Power 5 vote is 1 per school.
Yeah,
period.
But they might not be a Power 5 school very long. It's quite possible in 2026 one of these conferences gets dropped down. There's just not enough meat on the bone to keep them as an qualified school.
That's not how the NCAA is built. If depending on who's left in the Pac-12, if you're trying to tell me that Stanford, California, Washington.
No, I'm not talking about any of those, Larry. Okay. I'm talking about say Oregon and Washington go as a couple, and Stanford decides they don't even want to do big boy football, and they're not an expansion candidate for the big for whatever their reason is. If the biggest, and then the 4 corners decide, you know what, the grass is greener and they're gone. You have the strippings of whatever's left, and all you have is Cal and Stanford. I don't think there's enough there to say that they're a P5 or an AQ league. I don't think there's enough meat on the bone to do that. And let's see, was this you? Did you put this up here? Or did I do that?
Just throw that up there. So
okay, go ahead and read it.
Yeah, so we're looking at Fresno compared to SMU. I mean, Fresno is significantly less than SMU in research. I mean, like you can look right here. SMU is the lowest out of all of our expansion candidates. You see how low the bar is once this comment's removed. But look at Fresno, 85 versus 329 over 10 years million. So Fresno doesn't do much research at all. That's nationally. That's like in the 300 to 400 range. So not very good, guys.
Fresno's kind of known as almost like a community college among state universities. They're like it has a very specific outreach, like who they're providing education for, what their mission is. It's never going to be a research institution.
Well,
right. And another point here is all these candidates offer something to the Pac-12. It's not necessarily research. SMU would not be a candidate for their research. SMU would be a candidate for Texas market, and SMU still does have somewhat of a brand, although it's, the main point of the brand is they got caught paying players and got the death penalty.
But their problem is a TV contract, and it does not help with that at all.
Here's a comment.
They can make the argument that it gets you into the Texas market. I don't agree with that, but that's the argument.
I don't agree with that either.
So this is a comment that Bob Thompson, who we all know is him and Jim Williams are the godfathers of realignment, and certainly I rely on him every day. He's answering this question from Chad. I bet we're missing this, that the Pac-10 gave back channel promises to SDSU and their consultants, causing them to believe an invite was imminent. SDSU either misinterpreted the back channels or the Pac-10 hit the stop button. Bob's reply, dry as always, quite possible, and then somebody poured salt on the wound by leaking the correspondence between SDSU and the Mountain West. So can we circle back and just sort of put a bow on what happened with SDSU? And are they going to get an invite, guys?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
It's
Who?
the
Let's
time.
so
The
you
time
says
is the
yes.
question.
Who says no?
I say no.
Okay, immaculate. How about you, Larry?
I say they're, yeah, I think they will.
Okay, and
Are
Mullen.
we talking to the Pac-12 or just in general to a P5?
The question was Pac-12, but we can
Okay.
make it whatever you want. We can make
Well,
it
I mean-
just a B5.
My answer is probably no to both, but it might be a little bit less of a no if we're if we're also including the Big 12.
All right.
My answer is it depends.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
depends on what happens to the Pac-12. If the 10 schools stick together, they will not get an invite. The Pac-10 will not expand.
I agree with that. That's my
If
opinion.
somebody leaves, San Diego State's the number one candidate.
And if then the next team leaves, if Colorado leaves, I think SMU is
Colorado
on the vine.
State.
It's Colorado State's
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
agree.
a given.
I think it's
Okay.
important who stays behind. If it's California and Stanford, they're not inviting San Diego State just because they're going to make the pack in something entirely different. And San Diego State doesn't fit in with that. Like, they're done being P5. They're done competing at that top level. They're going to go in a different direction because, well, it's over. Like, neither one of them is carrying the athletics. So if you lose Colorado, if you lose Oregon, Washington, Arizona State, Utah,
Well, yeah,
what are you trying to do?
Complete collapse.
We
I'm
were just
saying
talking about
two leaving.
Colorado.
Like,
Yeah, we
just
were
Colorado leaves?
Colorado and maybe Arizona. That's all we were talking
Right.
about. Yeah.
But those schools know who else is probably going to leave at that point in time. I think they're all just waiting to see the contract because, like you were saying earlier, the Big 12 is a lateral move, and to some of them, in some ways, is going downwards. They
Right.
can't make that sale without having some hard proof in hand to show to other powerful people within their system, like, this is why we need to do this. We've been telling you this, but not everyone's on board. This is why our athletic department will collapse if we stay and we go with this. So that's what they would need to move. So basically, once that comes, I think it's more of a dominoes effect. And if Colorado's leaving and no one else is staying, well, they're going to stay for $15 million a year when they could.
Well, you have to look. Okay, you have to look at this. You have 10 members.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be proactive? Are you going to be reactive? San Diego State, if you don't add them, now you've created a reactive situation waiting for people to leave. If you have, I can guarantee you the Oregon State, Washington State is saying, bring them in now. Because if you get exits, you've already brought them in. They've already established a P5 identity. So, I mean, the Pac-12 has always been reactive. Are they going to be proactive? And who wants to add them? And I agree, Stanford and Cal would probably do not want to add San Diego because that dips into their resources within the state. So that's my opinion.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think, and we'll wrap this up. I just had one other question about the Pac-12 really quick before we get to this UConn question, which is the other part I wanted to touch on tonight. Is, do we think that Robbins being added to the President's Council, the three top presidents that are leading the conference of the Pac-12, and Kase being dropped off from Washington, and then Schultz being made the president of that small group, does that mean anything? I personally think that could be disaster for the Pac-12, because if once Robbins is actually seeing all the communications that's going back and forth, no longer just the filtered down information, he might say this is no good, and you can have your Pac-12 media days, and then I'll be gone. Do you guys think that has anything to do with it?
I don't see that. I don't see it making much of a difference. I think that these presidents really had all the facts all along. I don't think there was just like that tight group of 2 or 3 that are just hiding information. I think that it's been more socialized amongst that 10 president group.
Okay.
And going back to that, I got to say this: the San Diego State's, it's critical for the Pac, y'all. Like, it really is the recruiting grounds. You have to have it. If somebody else comes and takes it, you are screwed. The Utes recruit so hard out of Southern California. What's the point of being in the Pac-12 if we can't even have those recruiting grounds? If somebody else takes that, if the Big 12 takes that, it's deadly. Like, you have to have it. Like, it's not even an option. Like, it's just strategic-wise, it's a must-add, San Diego State, in my mind. There's no way you can afford not to have them. And if you have to go to 11, so be it. But they are a must. I mean, you've lost LA completely. You've got nothing. You've got NorCal. You've got nothing in SoCal. SoCal is now Big Ten country. You need something, a flag in there of some type, and that's SDSU. So I see it as absolutely essential.
Well, it is the closest one, but LA people generally just don't give a damn about anything San Diego. So I don't know if it really gets you young, recruitable players. I mean, it gives you a place for them to go and see you, but I just don't think, like, it's definitely not going to get you the LA market per se, but it might help you enough with a recruit to come down there and watch. I guess I'd say the only way I really see them getting in is with like that 3-year idea, where they're going to have a 3-year deal. Then I could see San Diego State coming in for that. Like if you lose Colorado, and that's the only one that moves it for a little bit, because that's all that the Big 12 can do for right now. Yeah, then definitely they grab San Diego State to fill that, at least for that 3-year period. And then if the conference falls apart because everything out east has been figured out, well, then it falls apart and San Diego State goes somewhere else. So I guess I'd have to change my answer earlier to what Mo and Vision said and say it depends.
I have a
That's fair enough.
question, Nathan.
Yeah.
I haven't been following a lot the last couple of days. Did you just say to me that Washington Cossier stepped down?
Yeah, they do a rotation.
You know what?
July 1st.
I said a month ago that she needed to step down, because if she is talking to the Big Ten and also being the president of the media deal, that is 100% a conflict of interest. So yes, I said that a month ago that she shouldn't be there. If she's talking to the Big Ten about trying to join, that is a complete conflict of interest.
Right.
So yeah, that concerns the hell out of me.
Well, and you went, Schultz is now the president of that group. There's only 3 of them. It's Robbins.
Why are you pooping on my parade?
I'm not. Don't yell at me. Gosh.
Why did we take? I mean, Robin, of the 2 numbskulls you could have brought in, why those 2?
I don't know, but I do know this, that Schultz just ran his athletic department and school into a major deficit in money. I can only imagine the good work he can do at the Pac-12. That's all I can say.
Well, and keep in mind, the president of USC was on that same panel,
and then
she
left
was talking to the Big Ten.
Right, exact same hat. And I heard
it's
this.
Not like it's not without precedent.
Right, Dan Patrick talked about this. He broke the whole thing down. The USC person votes against picking up Big 12 schools. She then courts the Big 10 and votes not to expand the Pac-12. Leaves to the Big Ten. The next president of that council is Washington. Now, the last year, she's been leading these negotiations on this president's group, and now she's stepping down, not because there's a rotation. And oh, by the way, there's the Big Ten again. Yeah, I think I know what Ute said, that he didn't think it was a big deal. I actually think it's a monumental deal, because now Robbins is in there. And he had the same information, and he could do the exact same thing and go to the Big 12.
Okay, that now I'm jumping to another part. Of all the people that really should have been put into that over Schultz or Robbins, I think Utah's president, Harlan, is a much better candidate. Why is he not?
I don't know how the rotation works. You're going to have to do some research on that. I just know that the rotation happened on July 1st. It was planned.
Okay.
But I don't think it's a good sign.
No.
Anyway, let's move on to UConn really quick. I know you wanted to he's put a time limit on me, guys. I'm sorry. I could go forever. But let's talk about UConn really quick, because UConn's big for the Big 12.
Hey, Bomber, I can drop if you want to keep going. We got the panel here. So.
Yeah, let's do that. I can get rid of you. Bye. No, I'm seeing it. Yeah. Anyways, so we have a show on Saturday. Everybody catch us, Holy Rivals Saturday. But I'm going to be doing Mafia shows all week. So leave a tip at the door. We'll see you later.
Take care.
Bye, Wild Ute.
So see you, Phil.
Let's talk really quick about UConn, because I think this is one that actually could happen regardless of what happens in the Pac-12 and with the Big 12. I think the only thing that's holding up a UConn invite to the Big 12 is just whatever happens to the Pac-12. I think that invite's probably already in an embossed invitation ready to go, is my opinion, just on stuff I've read. Here's a comment from BR, and then I'll ask you guys' opinions about it. He says, UConn brings the New York market hoops, and former NFL coach Jim Mora is the coach there. He got them into a bowl game their first year. They've been horrible, and then Jim Mora came in, did some recruiting. He's actually recruiting at a high level right now. And it increases the Big 12 footprint into that northeastern part of the country. So I'm a proponent of UConn, regardless of how their football has been in the last decade. What do you guys think?
You guys got anything on this one? I could probably go for a while.
I'm against the Big 12 adding any schools that are not
P5. Yep, I knew that.
P5 schools.
Yep, and tell us why. Just reiterate again. I know why, Mo.
It's just it's perception. It
Right.
comes down to perception. I think the Big 12 needs to establish its brand. They're working towards being conference number 3 when everything shakes out. When the ACC implodes and the Pac finally crumbles, they want to be that number 3 squad. It's going to be real hard to establish that if they just keep adding more and more. They got the 4 best G5 independent schools out there already. You don't want to keep adding and adding and adding more. I think it's just a perception issue.
Right. I think that's fair. Larry or Immaculate, do you guys have
I'm
any
in
opinions about that?
agreement 100%
With who?
with Mo and Vision.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, thank you, Larry. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
Nope.
Okay, all right, that works. Immaculate, bail me out here, man. Help me out.
I agree with everything Mo and Vision just said, but I have a but.
Okay,
I agree with everything, but once that becomes the case, which I think is absolutely the case, you have to say, why is there so much buzz about them? Well, if you've been following realignment for as long as I have, it's my obsession. This is not new. This has been the case with every round of realignment. UConn always gets brought up, and it always comes back to ESPN with their massive headquarters being in the state of Connecticut.
In Bristol, yep.
And they, anytime you own that much land and you're that big in there, you have so much expenditure there, you're always trying to get tax cuts from the state, and it's huge money. And people talk about, oh, well, they're hurting for money. Well, that could possibly make it to where ESPN cares about this a whole lot more right now. And if they get UConn into a P5, it's going to help that state so much. When you look at how much money that they have to spend on their athletic department that comes in subsidies, I think it's like over $20 million. It's an insane amount of money that UConn has been having to spend on their AD ever since they've basically kind of been left out. So if ESPN can push that, they'll make up whatever cost it is to pay the Big 12 to take them in their deals with the state of Connecticut. So that's the one P5 that I have listed that could go before the big P5 vote, or the one G5 that could go to the P5 before the vote happens at this point in time, because I think ESPN would pay the freight.
And what if they do? That changes the dynamic. That was my follow-up question. What if they get fully funded, Moen? What if the ESPN underwrites it and they get fully funded with pro rata, and they're brought in at the same tier, the same rate as BYU and the other schools? Does that change your calculation?
Is it's the perception.
But the money isn't the perception? Have we all along been talking about money?
I think you've got to look at the overall perception of your conference.
Okay.
If you take another G5 independent, it's basically saying we struck out on the Pac-12 and we're forced to take UConn. I don't think that UConn's a bad candidate. I think UConn as the next addition to the Big 12 at this point in time is not the right step. UConn can come down the road. UConn's going to be available for you 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 7 years from now.
Right, I agree with that.
I don't think that there's any rush for the Big 12. If the Big 12 misses out on the Pac-12 schools, their best thing to do is just stay put.
Bomber,
Stay
if I
put.
may.
Of course.
No, keep going. I'm sorry, man. I thought you were.
No, that's all right.
I just stay put, wait for everything to settle out and get the best of what's available left.
But I get that under normal timelines, but we're not in a normal timeline. They're in a timeline to try and get as much done as they can in a very quick amount of time. You might hear Greg talk about 2026. If the problem in the pack is that the movement for these schools that go first has to be the Big 12, and so they have a lot of pushback against doing that, you may only have one school that's willing to do it right now. Maybe that one school is Colorado. You pair Colorado with UConn, they go in, boom, now the pack is in a much different situation than they are right now. Now every single president has to look at the situation in a much different light. Okay, now we lost Colorado. We bring in San Diego State. Maybe that's the move, but the value is even less. Whereas when you're trying to get this deal down right now, whatever it is, chances are it's not very good. It's not going to be better by losing Colorado. So I think that if Arizona is sitting here going, we're having a hard time making this decision right now. Well, if you can find someone else to pair up with Colorado right now, that could be enough to budget, along with, finally with the contract being shown. Now, that may not be necessary. And maybe after media days, maybe they see this, maybe Colorado and Arizona jump, and then you don't need UConn. But UConn is a nice bundle to help kind of get that first domino going if it's necessary. If maybe the Arizona president's facing a little too much pushback right now. You know what I mean?
I do. So let's talk about that then. Colorado, if they move, they're backfilled by San Diego State and whatever happens, SMU or whatever. But on the Big 12 side, Moen, how do you feel about UConn coming in as a match with Colorado? How does that change your dynamic at all?
No.
Okay. All right.
But
Okay.
I am firmly of the belief that Arizona is simply waiting for Colorado.
You think they're just waiting for an excuse?
Right.
Right.
They need somebody to move first, and as soon as Colorado moves, I believe the University of Arizona would move too, simply because of the basketball program.
Right.
I think UConn would be a much better partner with a University of Arizona than I do with a Colorado, but I still don't think that UConn's a viable candidate at this time.
So something just occurred to me, and Immaculate is maybe he said it and I just didn't hear it directly, but 2026 right now, the championship rights are owned by ESPN, and now because it rolled back, so they're starting in 24. Fox is brought in and is getting some games, and it went to 12. If again, underwrite ESPN thinking that they're underwriting UConn, could there be a push to include them before 26, primarily just so they have a little bit more pull before that next contract? Does that have any bearing on it at all?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I appreciate that. Let's just get through, and we're about wrapping up, guys. So I'm an hour and a half, and I know, for one thing, I want to thank everybody on the panel for being here. Everybody who's watching, you guys, if you're not subscribing and you're not watching, you are not getting really the heart and soul of what we're talking about with these universities. We care about all the universities we're talking about. None of them are less than others. Nobody is greater than others, except for maybe Ohio State for Moen. But everybody else, this really matters, and these conversations are important, and we appreciate you being here. Please subscribe so you can be included in our shows in the future. And I just want to again thank the panel for being here. I just want to run through a few comments. We're running out of time, so I'll try to get through as many as I can. Lurkers, thanks for being here, man. He says it's not disingenuous. It shows research is not tied to academic conference. Four Corners leaving for Big 12 doesn't prevent them from working with Cal Stanford on research. The one thing with this, Lurkers, and I'll ask for comments from the panel, but I actually think that Stanford is leveraging access to everything that they have on their research and development and all that stuff, access to it. They're saying if you break away from the pack, you're going to be cut off at the knees because they don't want to be left on an island. What do you guys think about that?
I agree. That's the only thing they have to leverage is their
Right.
research.
Larry or Immaculate, you want to add to that at all?
It's huge. Has nothing to do with disingenuous. It's about business relationships. And like I've always said, there's nothing against the Big 12, and it's not that they're not academically aligned with the Pac-12, but they're not academically aligned. There's just the curriculum that they share resources in are completely different.
Right.
There's engineering. You've got stuff where you can, you can intertwine some of the research for sure. But when it comes to tying that research into local economics and the pharmaceutical companies and just all the relationships you've built, there's no guarantee in business. And I've always said this, if Utah left the Pac-12 and went to the Big 12 before anybody else moved, I can almost guarantee you it's going to piss off some of the Pac-12 universities, and it's going to hurt some relationships. Now, if Utah doesn't leave and Stanford, whoever, Washington goes to the Big 10,
right?
I'm not saying they wouldn't do it, but why would Washington do research with Utah when they're going to be in a conference with Michigan, Ohio State? They're going to share resources there.
Right.
So it's huge in economic, just in the state of Utah. If you just go look at what it does for the state to be connected relationship wise, it's huge. It's massive. Utah brings in $6 billion. The University of Utah brings in $6 billion a year, and they spend $4.5 billion and employ 37,000 people. I don't know why they're going to rock that cart for some TV time for their football program and $5-10 million. There's no way they're rocking that boat. I wouldn't.
Well, and I think that, again, just to wrap it up, I think that means what it means on its face, and that is that there's a level of political machinations. You could call it extreme and call it extortion, that says you break up this team, you're out of the family, right? And
Yep.
Once you're out of the family, good luck getting back in. And I kind of think that's what we're talking about here.
If I could real quick on that.
Yeah, you bet.
I think it's dead on. There's a reason why Colorado and Arizona are much more publicly open to this idea than the likes of Utah and Arizona State. Utah and Arizona State have had their research go up because of their dealings in the conference. Arizona and Colorado are much more they're their own systems, so to speak. The Pac doesn't work like the Big Ten. They don't have a lot of sharing. It's business deals. Going into the Pac gets you new contacts, right? You get in there and now you're dealing with these folks. That's definitely helped Utah. I know that they haven't gone up in their rankings, but that just means everyone's gone up. But that meant Utah is able to at least keep up. But Colorado and Arizona would probably be hurt less by leaving, as these guys are saying. But if Colorado and Arizona leave, and then Washington and Oregon leave, at that point in time, I think Stanford's going to look at this and say, well, we get it, guys. You don't have as much of a choice now. So, but if Arizona State and Utah go first and cause this to happen, then yeah, Stanford could probably say, yeah, we weren't too happy with that. But they do just as much good for Stanford as Stanford does for them.
Right.
Stanford's facilities are filled up with research. They need to have partners that they can pass some research on to so that they maintain whoever that contact is, to an agency, to companies, whoever is going to Stanford, say, hey, can you do this? Stanford's like, no, we're a little full right now, but you know what? Utah's got some great folks over here. We vouch for them. You push that over there. They still need that because that keeps that contact alive. If they don't have anywhere for that research to go, then that company or agency has to go shop someone else. But if they know they can go to Stanford, and then if Stanford can't do it, they can shop it to someone else, then they still just go to Stanford.
Right.
So after Colorado and Arizona leave, and maybe Oregon and Washington, if the situation is dire enough that Utah and Arizona State have to leave, they don't lose that connection to Stanford because Stanford still needs that. But, if they cause the damage, then yeah,
right.
that could maybe do it.
And this I think wraps it up on that topic from Earl, who's a subscriber. He says, Mr. Monkey, don't forget political issues as well. I think that's the bottom line. And I contend at the very beginning of this last August, if the Pac-12 would have been very transparent of what the academics / research actually meant to them, why, not the actual data, don't tell people what the data means, but explain the why the importance of those alignments are so important, and why if somebody leaves, they're breaking away from that. If that had been the communication instead of this aggressive, we're better than you and you guys are truck stop and all that other stuff, we would not be in the place where we are. Now, I'm not saying that they would have had a media deal by now, but the PR battle that they've been losing for an entire year would have been completely different if they'd set the table differently. But when they came out aggressive and they were telling people what to think and why they should think it, and being demanding and overbearing, and then at the end of the day prideful, that's why we end up where we are. You guys, there are so many comments. I cannot get to all these. I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm doing a show tomorrow night with David from Arizona and I'm spacing. Who am I doing it with, David? Who's I can't remember who my Arizona State guy is. I apologize. Hang on a second. I got to get this name right. Otherwise, they're gonna hold this over my head.
Don't be calling a Wildcat a
Chris
Sun
Catch.
Devil.
So we got Wildcat Dave and Chris 24 Catch from Arizona State. I apologize, Chris. That's going to be on tomorrow, same time. It would be 8:30 Eastern. I hope to see everybody here. You guys, again, thanks for being on the panel. I can't thank you enough for your time, and I hope everybody's paying attention, because these guys know what's going on, and they're giving you insight that you're not getting anywhere else, except for maybe Greg Flugar, who does a similar type situation. So thanks for your time. Everybody have a great night, and we will catch you on the flip-flop, as they say. We'll see you later.
Bye.